there is a silent moment, almost invisible, when everything we call mine begins to dissolve. The body, the voice, the thoughts, the people, all slip through the fingers of time, and yet we keep trying to hold the wind. Attachment is the most human gesture and the most illusory. The fear of disappearing. It's the desperate wish to give form to what is fluid. But the truth, the one Alan Watts whispered like a gentle awakening, is both harsh and freeing. Nothing is truly ours. Not love, not pain, not tomorrow. When we understand this, we don't lose the world. We simply stop carrying it. And what once was weight becomes air. What once was control becomes trust. What once was fear becomes silence. So breathe, let go, just a little. Allow life to pass through you without needing to own it. If these words touch something within you, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel to walk deeper into these reflections. Each word, a step, each silence, an awakening the illusion of possession. We spend our lives collecting moments as if they could belong to us. We hold on to names, faces, memories, tiny pieces of time, carefully stored in fragile corners of the mind. But time has a quiet sense of humor. It watches us build our walls, label our treasures, and then, with one silent breath, it takes everything away. Because even as we hold something, it's already gone. A kiss fades before the lips leave each other. A laugh dies the moment it's born. A photograph, no matter how perfect, is only the shadow of a heartbeat. We try to stop the flow of life by freezing it, by giving it titles, by calling it mine. But the more we try to own something, the more it slips through our fingers, like trying to hold water with a closed hand. We say, my house, my love, my peace, but nothing stays. Not the house that ages, not the love that changes, not the peace that depends on stillness. Everything breathes, shifts, and dissolves. Everything lives only in motion. And maybe, just maybe, the real suffering isn't in losing what we had, but in believing we ever had it. Look closely. Even your body, the one you call mine, is borrowed. The air that fills your lungs doesn't belong to you. The heartbeat you depend on beats on its own without your permission. The cells you claim as yours are born and die every second, a million tiny deaths that keep you alive. You are not the owner of life. You are the witness of its passing. And yet, we keep counting what we have, calling it security, calling it success. But it's a delicate illusion built on the fragile sand of impermanence. The truth is quieter than that. It whispers in the pauses between breaths, in the moments when you forget to hold. It says, you own nothing, and that is your freedom. Because when nothing belongs to you, everything can touch you. The world becomes lighter, the people more real, the moments more alive, because they're not trapped inside the word, mine. The illusion of possession is the root of our restlessness. We want the permanent in a world made of movement. We want the eternal in a universe built from change. But maybe peace begins when we stop fighting the wind. When we sit by the river and finally understand that it was never meant to be held, only witnessed, only felt, only lived. The hands that grasp look at your hands, always reaching, always closing around something. We are born reaching for warmth, for safety, for touch, and for the rest of our lives, we keep doing the same. Only now the things we reach for have different names. Money, love, recognition, certainty, control. We reach for all of it, believing that if we can just hold on tight enough, we'll be safe from the silence that waits behind everything. But what happens when the hands rest? When they no longer need to grasp? It's a moment, quiet, almost sacred, when the muscles unclench. The world enters you instead of being seized by you. That is the beginning of peace. The hands that grasp are hands that fear. They do not trust life to give. They only know how to take. But life was never meant to be taken. It was meant to be touched lightly, like the surface of water, just enough to feel its coolness without disturbing the reflection. We call it ambition, we call it purpose, but often it's just fear disguised as effort. The fear of emptiness, the fear that if we stop reaching, we'll disappear. So we keep building, buying, collecting, holding on to words, to people, to pain. We even grasp at meaning itself, as if understanding could save us from the mystery. But mystery is not a problem to solve. It's the space where truth breathes, and truth cannot live in a closed fist. Open your hand, feel the air move across your palm. That is what letting go feels like. Not death, but returning to life. Because when your hands are open, you can finally receive. You can feel the world, not as something to possess, but as something that flows through you. The hands that grasp build walls. The hands that open build bridges. To live with open hands is to walk through the world without trying to capture it. To trust that what is meant to stay will stay on its own. And what must go was never yours to begin with the weight of mine. Every time we say mine, something inside us tightens. A small, invisible chain forms, delicate, almost beautiful, but heavy. We tie it to everything we love. My family, my partner, my dream, my truth, okay? And in the quiet of our minds, we even whisper it toward ourselves. My life, my story. But life was never ours. It moves through us like wind through open fields, touching, passing, moving on. We are not the owners of the moment. We are its witnesses, temporary vessels of something infinite. The word mind carries comfort, a small illusion of control, to give shape to the formless, safety to the uncertain. But that comfort is heavy, because everything we call mine becomes something we fear to lose. And what a strange paradox. The more we possess, the more we are possessed by our possessions. The more we hold, the less we can move. We build a house and call it home, and soon we build a cage inside it. We fall in love and say, you are mine, and the beauty of connection turns quietly into the fear of absence. We achieve something, and instead of freedom, we feel the weight of keeping it. That single word, mine, is the quiet beginning of suffering. Alan Watts once said, you cannot get wet by the word water, and in the same way, you cannot find peace by the word mine, because peace is not a thing to own. It's what's left when ownership disappears. We've built our entire identity on a collection of claims, names, opinions, histories, wounds. We carry them like stones in our pockets, calling them who we are. But if we dared to empty those pockets, to drop the stones one by one, we might discover that beneath all that weight, there is stillness, a self that doesn't need a label, a life that doesn't need a title. The I that says mine is only a voice, a sound echoing in an empty room. When you stop answering it, the echo fades, and what remains is silence, the kind that doesn't frighten you anymore. The heaviest part of mine is not what it attaches to, but what it hides. It hides the vastness of being. You do not own the sunset, you are part of its light. You do not own the sea, you are made of its water. You do not own this moment, you are the moment, brief and eternal at once. When the word mine fades, a strange lightness returns, not because you lose what you loved, but because you realize it was never apart from you. The world does not belong to us, we belong to it, not as owners, but as witnesses of its endless unfolding. The river and the rock, life moves like a river, soft, relentless, eternal. It bends, it curves, it carries everything, dreams, mistakes, beginnings, endings. Nothing escapes its current, and yet, somewhere in its flow, we choose to become the rock. We plant ourselves in the middle of the stream, saying, here I will stand. Here I will remain. We build identities from stone, rigid, proud, immovable, and call them me. But the river doesn't stop. It pushes, it pulls, it whispers against our edges until the hardness begins to wear away. Not out of cruelty, but out of love, because the river knows something we've forgotten. Stillness without surrender is just resistance. We mistake stability for control. We think that to flow is to fall apart. So we hold to beliefs, to routines, to our own reflection, afraid that if we let go, we'll vanish into the current. But the truth is gentler. We don't disappear when we surrender. We dissolve into belonging. The rock is proud of its shape. It says, I am solid. I am strong. But over time, even stone becomes sand. Even the hardest parts of us are destined to soften. And when they do, we finally understand that strength was never about standing still. It was about learning how to move, how to bend without breaking, how to flow without fear. The ego is that rock, the illusion that we can define the undefinable, that we can tell the river who we are. But the river doesn't ask. It just flows endlessly, carrying fallen leaves, lost words, forgotten names, and still it remains itself. When we try to stop life, we suffer. When we fight the current, we drown in our own resistance. But when we let the water take us, something miraculous happens. We begin to trust. To surrender is not to give up, but to return to what has always carried you. The river does not need your permission to flow. It was flowing long before you arrived, and it will continue long after you're gone. You don't have to be the rock anymore. The beauty of water is that it leaves nothing untouched, and the gift of surrender is that it leaves nothing unloved. Because the truth is simple, you were never the rock. You were always the water, pretending to be still. The fear of emptiness there is a moment. After you've let go of everything you thought you were, when the silence becomes too wide. The world feels hollow, the self feels missing, and for the first time, you hear the echo of your own existence. That is the fear of emptiness, the quiet dread that arises when everything you've used to define yourself fades into stillness. It creeps in softly, like wind in an abandoned room. You look around for something to hold an identity, a purpose, a thought, but the walls you used to lean on are gone. If I'm not what I've owned, if I'm not who I've loved, if I'm not the story I tell myself, then what am I? That question, heavy and unanswerable, is the beginning of awakening. Most people turn away. They fill the void with noise, with new goals, distractions, and attachments. They fear the silence because it feels like death. But emptiness is not death. It's the space where life begins. The fear comes from misunderstanding. We see emptiness as absence, as a cold vacuum where meaning cannot survive. But look deeper. It is not empty. It is open, not barren, but vast. It's not silent, but listening. The universe was born from emptiness. Every star, every sound, every breath rose from that sacred nothing. The same is true within us. When we stop filling ourselves with noise, when we stop reaching, naming, grasping, we return to that origin. We meet the same stillness that gave birth to everything. It's terrifying at first because it asks us to die before we truly live, to let the false self fall away so the real one, the nameless one, can breathe. The mind wants to be someone, not something. It wants a border, a definition, a mirror. And emptiness gives it none. That's why it feels unbearable, not because it lacks meaning, but because it dissolves the one who demands it. Yet, emptiness is not the end of meaning. It is its beginning. From silence comes sound, from stillness comes motion, from nothing comes everything. When you stop running from the void, you begin to see its beauty. You realize it's not there to swallow you, but to hold you, like the sky holds the stars, like the ocean holds the waves. Slowly, the fear becomes tenderness. You start to breathe differently, not as someone trying to fill the space, but as someone being filled by it. What you called emptiness was never empty at all. It was fullness, too vast to name. When you can sit within that space, without running, without labeling, without fear, you found freedom, not the freedom of having, but the freedom of being. Because the void you feared the most was never your enemy. It was the infinite, waiting to be remembered. Love without possession. We often confuse love with holding. We say, I love you, and quietly mean, I need you. We build nests out of expectation and call them devotion. We wrap our arms around someone and call it safety, when often it's only fear disguised as care. But love, true love, cannot be owned. Move like breath, quiet, essential, and free. It comes and goes like the tide, and that is what makes it sacred. When you try to keep it, it becomes smaller. When you let it flow, it becomes endless. Possession is the shadow of love, born from the fear of loss. We hold because we are afraid to feel empty again, afraid that our hearts won't survive another goodbye. Yet love, real love, was never meant to be a contract. It is a meeting, a recognition, a soft echo between two souls crossing paths in time. It asks for nothing, but gives everything. And in giving freely, it reveals that love's power was never in ownership, but in presence, in the quiet courage of seeing another being exactly as they are, without the need to keep them there. Alan Watts once said, if you love a flower, don't pick it up, because if you pick it, it dies. If you love a flower, let it be. That is the essence of love without possession. To admire without needing. To touch without claiming. To witness without fear. When love is free, it becomes honest. No cages, no debts, no conditions. Only the raw beauty of being here, together, for however long the universe allows. We were taught to measure love by its permanence, but permanence is not proof of truth. Sometimes the deepest love lasts only a moment, a glance, a silence, and yet it lingers forever in the soul. Love is not about finding someone who completes you. It's about remembering that you were never incomplete. The other is not your missing piece, but your reflection, showing you what already lives within. To love without possession is to walk beside someone without trying to bind them, to open your hands and say, I will not make you mine. I will simply walk with you until the path parts. And when it does, you do not grieve the loss of ownership. You celebrate the gift of connection. Because love's beauty is not in its duration, but in its depth. To love is not to keep, but to see. To love is not to own, but to understand. And when you love like that, you realize that love was never something you gave or received. It was something you were all along.